The Lost Signals present
I see the gruel is ready.
a celebration of international horror and another Halloween sequel
Michael Myers is outside.
with in-depth analysis,
تو پسر خوب هستی.
adult content, adult language,
Oh my god.
and spoilers.
Сталкеру нельзя входить в комнату.
Join us.
Aren't I lucky I got a chunky bit?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to MOTS-O-Ween, which we're recording once again in August because we're ahead of the schedule. I'm here today in close-up because myself, Jonathan Manzer, and Christopher Morgan are the only ones here. Yes, yeah. Thank you for displaying your Spock.
I don't display my Spock to just anybody.
Hey. And today we are doing one of my favorite movies growing up. I'm not going to say it's a good movie, but it's definitely an entertaining film. Directed, first movie by and co-starring Peter Jackson's Bad Taste. And
Also written by, visual effects by, prosthetics by.
in fact, it's a one-man show. But it's definitely one of a kind, to put it politely. All right, Chris, would you like to talk about the plot?
Yes, well, I guess I don't really have a funny logline. I guess I could say this film did not leave a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, hey, that works.
Or to call back to something from one of our earlier podcasts, human beings taste the best. I don't know about dead babies, but
To serve New Zealanders?
to serve New Zealanders. Oh my God.
Okay.
How did that one get by us? Okay. The story is about some aliens that invade a small town in New Zealand, basically consume the residents, and they're shapeshifters because why not? And there's a team of
Budget.
because of budget, yes. And there's a team of four people.
4 people.
4 people. Oh, plus Imperious leader. What was his name? Lord Crumb. And basically these 4 people play everything in the town, every alien. And basically these people are trying to investigate and thwart an invasion to kill the aliens before they can wreak havoc. And a lot of this goes on, and they finally track the aliens down to a house, and they infiltrate the aliens, and one of them eats some vomit, and there's a really awesome there's a really amazing shootout at the end. It's just like taking all of this B or C grade direct-to-video VHS tape action films from the 80s and really just doing it really well or really poorly. And there's some mayhem with the rocket launcher that just doesn't seem to kind of like really ever hit its target. Maybe once blowing up a car.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and one of the guys investigating, who is initially killed. He goes down he gets pushed down Peter Jackson pushes himself down the cliff, and he cracks his head open and is partially eaten by seagulls. And then he gets up, puts parts of his brain back in his skull, ties it up with his belt.
He tries a hat at first.
Yeah,
but that doesn't quite work.
Yeah, so then tries a hat, and then he finally infiltrates the aliens. The house where the aliens are nesting takes off because it's also their spaceship, and then he kills Lord Crumb and decides he is going to go off with his chainsaw to the alien planet and avenge this town.
One of the great unsolved cliffhangers of our times.
I would really like somebody to, using today's visual effects, make that movie.
No. because the entire charm of this film is it's low budget and actually doing brilliant effects work on a low budget.
But the thing is, they could do like a D-grade Sci-Fi Channel original movie of this. So using today's effects, but on a budget. So you're using CGI, but like the Commodore Apple Amiga.
A bit Garth Marenghi style.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I see a lot. I guess we'll go. I'll save the rest of what I'm going to say for style. So I'm going to give this a 2.
Generous of you.
Well, yeah, it is. But the thing of the matter is, the first half of the film, I kind of would give. I was half there and half not. But the second half of the film, I was completely invested. But I appreciated, even if I was restless during it, and I was kind of get to a point. This film doesn't really have a point. And they really concealed the fact that it was just 4 of them pretty well. Mm-hmm. We didn't realize that the nerdy guy was Peter Jackson, so that was pretty amazing.
There's more than 4 cast members in this.
So. Well, maybe 5.
Yeah.
All right. So, but the thing is, this is definitely not a 3 film, and maybe giving it a 2 is generous. But if we could split hairs, it would probably be closer to a 1.5. But I'm going to give points for, even though it was slow, narratively speaking, it really didn't make a lot of, it didn't make sense. But you know what? For what was there, it may be a softer 2, but I'm going to give it a 2.
I think I'm going to give this a 1, though I recommended this, because I love this movie. I'm going to say a scene that words cannot do justice, but I'm going to say it anyway. A man who just put his own pieces of his own brain and some alien brain into his head, wielded a chainsaw, decided to cut through a wall to get into a house and cut a perfect image of him entering with a chainsaw.
Yes.
Meanwhile, another character who has been jonesing to use a rocket launcher fires it at an alien. The alien ducks, almost hits the guy with the chainsaw as he dives out of the way, and it goes and blows up a sheep. As the sheep, bah! It is one of the funniest moments I've seen in a film ever, by the sheer audaciousness of it and the sheer ridiculousness of it. But the plot makes no sense. The aliens work for a corporation, and they're trying to make the next big food item because, what was it, moon rats or whatever?
Moon rats, yeah. Something like that.
From one of the competitors. They find out that human beings taste delicious, which they do. And,
yeah, firsthand.
and these just 4 schlums are taking on this alien. It doesn't make sense. There's really no plot arcs. No character arcs in this, aside from the guy who is trying to piece his head back together.
Okay, so wait. All right. Should we get, see, this is the thing is, like, I'm trying to separate the viscera versus the absolute objective narrative for this. But the thing is, I think this is what propels for me, and I don't know, this is not really narrative any more than the sheep thing is, I guess. But the greatest thing, and anybody, I love vomit humor. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just think it's hilarious. Yeah. It might be some bizarre.
I love over-the-top comic book violence.
But when they picked up Peter Jackson and he vomits in the bowl for everybody to drink, and Lord Crumb drinks it, he goes, he goes, what do you say? I got a solid bit.
I got a chunky bit.
I got a chunky bit. And then the one of the 4 guys trying to infiltrate it, actually, who's infiltrated this little party here, actually tries to warn
by just putting on a shirt.
Yeah, by just putting on a shirt. Because oh man, invasion of the white men. This is all. It's all good. They're all wearing jeans. I mean, the only way to make these guys more white is if they're wearing khaki pants, because they're all wearing blue button-down shirts.
New Zealand for you.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, that scene was incredibly, and this is all right. So the one guy tries to escape, And just before he's about to leave the room, they hand him the bowl, and he takes a sip, and he's like, and takes another sip. I mean, the scene, it reminded me so much of the scene in Dead Alive, where with the custard eating scene, or where it's just like, I love eggs and beans, and I love custard. And yet, I thought it was hilarious when the woman watching his dead mother fall apart while they're eating this meal, and it did not diminish my love for any of these foods. I did not look back on it and be like, "Oh, I can never eat custard again."
Didn't diminish my taste for human flesh.
And I'm like looking, yeah, exactly. And when I'm looking at this, is I'm looking at the vomit and going, this looks like green ambrosia salad.
It did. Actually, that might be exactly what it is.
Yeah, it might be. And I'm like sitting here going, "Oh, that's disgusting. It's vomit," but it does kind of look good. But the thing is, I love that scene. It was repulsive, and I couldn't stop laughing. And it's funny because I had post put in for dental surgery, so it actually hurt to laugh, and I couldn't help but laugh.
Best thing is, I feel that's all style.
Yeah,
the narrative structure of this is borderline. If this wasn't a comedy, this would be unwatchable. Yeah,
okay, I'm giving it a 1. Because then I gotta separate the style from the. You're right. Most of what I enjoyed about this was the style. Narratively, it makes very, very little sense.
Yeah. And as you said, it meanders a lot. It's slow at times, but it makes it up for it in its ridiculousness of its everything else. Okay, on to me with themes. Vomit and ultraviolence can be hilarious. Humans are delicious.
I like where they're brining the guy too. Because that's what I do at Thanksgiving. I put my turkey in a brine and I put all the fruits and vegetables in there, and they're brining. they tape the apple in his mouth. Again, I'm not sure if we're going to style, but you brought it up about
Yeah, I mean, there are many ways to cook a human.
To serve man.
Yeah. So, I guess there's a little bit about corporatism in this, with the fact that the aliens are non-traditional invaders. They're businessmen. In fact, the leader is high rank. He doesn't even care about the lives of any of the other aliens there, because they're all blue-collar workers, I think he calls them.
Oh, yeah, because that makes sense, because the jeans and the blue shirts, and the fact the voices carry no weight. They don't even have voices.
Yeah. So there is a little something there.
Yeah, there is a little something.
I don't know if it was the intent of this film, but I mean, and this is definitely the blue collar X-Men, not X-Men, X-Files. Like, these guys are, they have their secret car has a poster of the Beatles on the windshield from Sgt. Pepper's.
Yeah, the cutout.
And they have, basically, you stand and drive it. It's one of the most ridiculous vehicles I've ever seen. But maybe I'll give it a 0.6 or 1.
Yeah, Spock would say it's not logical, but I'll give it as 0.6.
Yeah. So a 1 for themes, even though I think I just stretched.
Yeah, you did, but you know what the thing is some of the parts, if there is a theme, even if it's...
There's some parts...
There is a social commentary there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it credit for in a movie that... I'll take whatever like 1% that would have... I'll move over from plot to this.
This kind of invasion might fly in New Zealand. It wouldn't fly in America.
Who would notice it?
That's true.
In America? Who the fuck would notice it?
We would be eating their product.
Who the hell knows whose vomit we're eating on a daily basis anyway?
So let's continue talking about the antagonist.
The antagonists are these aliens, Lord Crumb and the mindless workers, the proletariat.
They must seize the means of human consumption.
Yes, they must see. Yes, wait. There's a Kafka here somewhere. There's good. The humans have to eat their own vomit. Whatever they can regurgitate is what they're stuck. They're basically re-eating what they're reconsuming what they've consumed the night before or earlier that day. And the boss is basically taking some of their regurgitation. Okay, you know what? These may not be the strongest antagonists, but they're antagonists. I mean, they're the reason that these four guys are going after them.
Yeah.
And they do contribute to the themes. I mean, actually, the more we're discussing the antagonists, the more it strengthens the themes. I mean, we may be up to a 0.7 on the themes.
So, obviously, they all are terrible marksmen. And our heroes are superb marksmen. Aside from the main bad guy. In fact, it actually is almost video game-like. There's a bunch of mooks. There's the mini-boss of the cook. There is the final boss of the head honcho. Actually, it's a lot like Abe's Odyssey, if you've ever played that, which is similar themes. But nonetheless, it reminds me of almost a video game.
Well, actually, you know how I'm famous for bringing up Star Trek?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to actually bring up Star Wars.
Oh.
There's a running joke that the stormtroopers are the worst shots.
Yeah.
That
Stormtrooper Academy.
And the funny thing is that the guns that the stormtroopers were based on in Star Wars are the exact ones they use in here. Everybody being... I honestly think this is an homage to Star Wars.
Could be.
In the fact they're using the similar type of gun. And that they're all bad shots. I mean, especially the aliens. I mean, the aliens are just... They can't even... They could barely ever kill somebody with a sledgehammer. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I love the little...
Yes.
The little handheld hammer that the one alien uses. Oh. And I loved... And this might go to style, but I'm afraid I'm going to forget it, so I'm going to bring it up here. I love the way it's shot as it looks like a normal size hammer. But when he goes to grab it, all of a sudden you realize it's this small hammer. That was
it's good. A lot of good visual gags in this.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are you giving the antagonist?
I'm going to be in a 1.
And actually, I like how they become more competent when they turn into their actual form.
Yeah.
Meaning that it might be a burden for them to wear the human form. And I think they actually bring that up maybe occasionally once.
And I love the fact that, like, when they turn the alien form, parts of like their asses hang out, like there's a cheek under each side. You've got, so it almost becomes like the back of their pants becomes almost like the back of the thong.
Yeah,
it was hilarious and disturbing all at once.
Yeah, that's what I want to. I didn't think of that until you mentioned it. Now I can't get it out of my head.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to talk about the protagonists here. Derek, Barry, Ozzy, and Frank. I'm putting them all in there because they all play a role. I think I got all of the names. So I apologize if I mix up the names here. Derek is the nerd. He's their tech guy, even though their tech is a really low budget. He's the one who cracks his head open, and he's the one with the biggest character arc, as he is driven mad by losing part of his brain and putting some alien brain in there, and ends up going into space to wreak havoc upon this alien civilization.
Maximum Derek.
Oh, yeah.
That's an esoteric reference, but...
In fact, he has a thing where he dives into the boss's mouth with a chainsaw and ends up coming through the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, they're trying to do a rebirth thing here? And he says, I've been born again. And I'm like, clever on you, Peter Jackson. All right, we have Barry, who plays a large role in the beginning and then sort of fades. Not much to say about him.
No.
Ozzy, who is maybe Australian, which would suggest his over-the-top aggression.
Was he the one who's
super gun guy?
Yeah, but was it his car? Oh no! The guy with the muscle shirt. Yeah, where he took off everything and had his red muscle shirt on, which is total 1980s.
Frank is your 80s action hero, and he's one of the more cliched characters, but done for laughs. And they're all effective at stopping this alien invasion, or at least for them leaving. I don't know. I mean, they're very one-dimensional characters.
Yeah. But see, that's by design, too.
Yeah.
I mean, this film knows what it is.
Well, convince me that I should give it a 1. Oh, so you're not going to give it a 1.
Derek has an arc. That's about all I can convince. No, I really don't see any true protagonist in this because Derek sets out a good portion. Like after he dies,
and get eaten by seagulls.
Gets eaten by seagulls.
Punches a seagull.
And very convincingly, you see the seagull corpse. No, I mean, seriously, Derek by himself is the closest we get to a protagonist, and he sets out about a third of the movie.
That's true.
Yeah. So I'd have to give protagonist a 0 on this. Because I cannot convince you to give it a 1.
Yes.
Maximum Derek.
Okay, continue talking about supporting.
Supporting characters. Basically, anybody who's not an antagonist is a supporting character. And I think it's impressive because there are a couple times I realized that they were played by the same people, but to be honest with you, they did a really good job. I mean, convincing to even though the antagonist didn't have much of a personality, I think that given the fact that, well, none of these guys were protagonists, really. Derek did have an arc, somewhat. And the fact of the matter is, they weren't really strong supporting characters, but without the supporting characters, you really wouldn't have anything to battle the antagonist. So I think defaultly, if I'm giving the antagonist a 0.7 or a 0.8, then I have to actually give these guys at least a 0.6.
Well, you're counting all 4 of them. The boys, I think they're called.
The boys.
Supporting character roles.
Yeah, because actually, as we were discussing before, even if they're caricatures, each one of them plays a certain part in the narrative. And as cliche as that might be, and as ham-fistedly unrealistic as that may be, they each did serve a point in the narrative. I mean, hey, they might be the strongest supporting characters, but,
I'm still counting all of them as protagonists.
Are you?
Yes. So that leaves me with 2 people. Their boss at the beginning, who has, I guess, missing a hand and has a finger projection. I don't know. He's not important. Perhaps the most important character here is the priest, maybe?
Oh my god, that was
guy?
Fucking brilliant.
I'm not sure what he was doing, because I feel it's a particular joke directed at New Zealand.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, he gets basted a little bit with.
He's the one. He's the one who gets brined. Yeah.
He's the damsel in distress.
Yeah, he is.
But he's a weird kind of 80s guy.
Yeah. And I don't know if this goes to style, but he's carrying around these bags. It's like bearer. It's like some
no, bread.
Bread. That's it, bread. But he pulls off part of the bag and turns it into a collar.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not really a priest.
That's why I said priest/conman.
Yeah. So he's priest/conman, and I thought that was a very clever gag.
Yeah, it was. So, as he's the impetus for the majority of the action in this, because they go into the house to save him and spend most of it trying to get him out of the house. I might have to give him a very, very soft one for supporting.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I'm going to stretch there because I want to give this more points.
Yeah, okay. So definitely, are you giving protagonist a 1?
No, 0.
Okay, good. All right. Well, because I figured, well, if you gave protagonist a 1, I'd give supporting 1, then we'd cover it. But if we're both giving protagonist a 0, then definitely I think supporting is a good one to give that 1 to.
So dialogue.
Was there any?
Certainly there was. I can't think of any lines off the top of my head, but I definitely laughed at some of the jokes they made and some of the ridiculousness of it. I also wasn't thrilled with a lot of it, but I don't know. It feels like a low budget. It's better than a lot of B, C level movies dialogue.
Again, I knew what it was, but the one line I remember, or at least kind of remember, was when he said, I got a chunky bit.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I don't remember any of the dialogue so much, but whatever Derek was mumbling to himself at any given time, I don't know. It was definitely not natural dialogue.
No.
But for this movie, I don't know.
The thing is, I've seen a lot of bad movies.
Yeah, me too.
And dialogue is often terrible in it.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing stands out at me as terrible. So I don't know. Maybe sentimentality is getting the best of me here.
Well, I mean, again, the film knows what it is. Because there are certain films that, like a Tarantino film, okay, you can't, with very few exceptions, you have to grade it as Tarantino dialogue. Mm-hmm. Okay, you have to grade it as certain stylistic. I mean, if you have a director or an author who's got a definitive voice, it leaves you no choice but to grade it as a separate entity. Does this person's dialogue, who's got a certain style to it, certain rhythm to it, does he or she make that natural for the context of the hyper-real world they created, or does it seem like an artifice and pretentious? And I'm kind of, this is how I'm thinking about this. This film knows what it is. Peter Jackson knew he has X amount of friends, X amount of people to do this with. So obviously he put the money to the prosthetics, because the prosthetics were great. Well, given what he had, I mean, the prosthetics were better than I thought they would be. And that is definitely going to discuss more in style. So given that he knew the film he was making, or given the budget and the limitations, even considered this was kind of partially funded by like the New Zealand Film Company or Film Board.
For some reason.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's like the Canadian Film Board. Do we judge it upon that?
The villain, the boss of the aliens, was certainly the best actor in this. And he definitely chewed the scenery a bit.
He may have been the only actor in this.
Yes. So he did a decent job. So I'm really torn about this, but because I'm afraid of sentimentality, because I don't want to grade something on that, I might have to give this a 0.
Yeah, I've been trying to talk myself into a 0.6 on this one. I'm not really sure I can do that.
Sorry, bad taste.
Yeah.
But here's one you can give a 1 on. Style.
I love the style of this movie.
It's amazing.
I love the style of this movie. And like I said before, that the prosthetics were a lot. You knew that's where the money went. But I'm also going to speak to homage, because he does he channels Fulci and Bava so well in this. Like, there's parts that I'm like, okay, this is definitely taken from this film. This is definitely Planet of the Vampires. Although done a little better than, Bava did at the time. But it's still the same, the corniness. He pays a lot of homage to Night of the Living Dead. The one alien that's trying to break into the car and actually goes back and grabs a rock, like the graveyard zombie did. And even part of the music for it, there's actually one part, and I remember this, they're on a small bridge leading to the house, because why not? There is actually a piece of the music that is actually almost taken directly, note for note, from Night of the Living Dead. I think as much as and I think there's George Miller when the car, even though it may be a poor man's Road Warrior, I did take notice with the sports car, that I'm like, wow, okay, they used their pennies on this one, however they shot it. I mean, it did pay homage to a lot of stuff, but also it did it in very creative ways. They really okay, we got a budget, so what are we going to draw upon, and what can we pay homage to, and how can we integrate it organically or as organic as this film could be. So I'm definitely going to say style is the strongest aspect of this film without question.
Everything in this film is a framework for Peter Jackson to have fun with special effects.
Yeah.
In a sense, also, it's almost like he develops set pieces for certain scenes to happen. Like, he's like, I had an idea to blow up a sheep with a rocket launcher. How can I make that happen? I want to crack the head open, put stuff brains back in. How can I make that happen?
Which actually, while the brains weren't too convincing, he did a really good job of creating the head trapdoor.
Yeah. No, it's not the most realistic gore, but that's not the intention either. It's fun comic booky gore, over the top. It's a revel in the ultra violence. So I'm gonna give it a 1. He succeeds.
Me too. And to something you said about creating set pieces and then creating a narrative around that. That's one thing I've said about Fulci. Like Fulci, I think his strengths actually were more instead of cinematography than storytelling. But there's definitely things in certain things like in The Beyond or City of the Living Dead where it's definitely like this is a random thing, but he wanted this in the film, so he sets it up. He wanted a lady throwing up her intestines, or he wanted this woman to faint and have acid fall on her head, this very stylized morgue, or something. It just seems like there was that such as that. There were some set pieces that he wanted to include in here, and God damn it, he was going to stretch the narrative, as it were, to make these scenes happen. Also, so, go on.
About soundtrack, you brought up. He does the 80s music very well in this.
And actually, to be honest with you, except for the songs, the actual songs of this, the soundtrack, the music to this was actually quite good. I was actually impressed that even for a B grade 80s film, it was a lot better than a lot of the stuff you'd see direct to VHS.
I'm guessing one of his friends was a musician.
Yeah.
And a somewhat talented one. So I'm going to go on to recommendation. And I recommended this for MOTS-O-Ween. I think it is worth watching. It's dumb. It's fun. Don't go in thinking it's a masterpiece. Go in. Like, this is a great horror movie night. Showing to drink beers and watch with your friends. And I was actually I was watching this again in my computer lab, and some of the students were watching with me, and everyone stood up and cheered when the sheep blew up because it's such a great moment that you're like, I'm waiting for something ridiculous to happen. Here it comes. Everyone was so happy with that. It's a joyful film.
It's really funny because when the first half of this, I was back and forth on it. I really wasn't sure, but I'm definitely going to say that for any slow parts it has, for any part that feels padding, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I'm so glad I saw it. I want to see it again because now I can go into it knowing where it's meandering to. Yeah. Because like I said at the beginning, I was like, all right, seems like padding, but I get this, and I'm like, I wish they'd moved. But as uneven as the beginning was, now I was trying to get a feel for it, and this actually parts of it, like I feel like Mark Gatiss and his team, as much as they pay homage to the films like Wicker Man, that they probably saw this and said there are elements of Peter Jackson's bad taste that we want to put into League of Gentlemen. Seriously, I mean, anybody who's a horror geek or any other genre geek is definitely going to pay homage and make references. And when you do it in a film, when you do it in a satire comedy like League of Gentlemen, or you do it in this film that does not take itself seriously and is purposely, because this was done late in the 80s, it purposely tries to put it into,
I think it was early 90s.
Was it?
I believe so.
Which even makes it better. Yeah. Because if you are trying to make a film with this style, Oh
no, it was 87. It was the year after I was born.
Okay, so it was 87. But the thing is, a lot of this has already been established. And if this film took itself seriously or tried to make a big film, I would look at this and being like, oh my God, they're ripping off the scene. This is so this is so cliche. This is so, what's the word I'm looking for? When you rip something off and you're being serious about it. Oh, well, whatever.
Plagiarism?
Plagiarism? No. Derivative.
Okay.
You would think this is very derivative, but this is intentionally derivative. I think they had a lot of fun. I think they intentionally paid homage to what they did. The film is very self-aware in its lunacy. The vomit and the sheep, are priceless. I mean, they're both, those scenes are definitely worth the price of admission. I really recommend it, and I definitely want to see it again.
Well, for all the, considering that we just gave it a glowing recommendation, and we talked about how the style is great, we gave it a 6 overall.
We gave it a 6?
Yeah.
Wait, we each?
Yes, and so overall it's a 6.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which, because it's plot and characters, not that great. Gore and ridiculousness, fantastic.
Yeah.
So on our scale, that's about saying it's a really bad movie that's really great, a really good bad movie.
Yeah.
And thus a 6 seems fitting.
Yeah, I mean, which is pretty much, that's how we just, except for style, that's how most of the ones happen, because it may be a point. This is going to give it a 0.6. The more we discuss the supporting characters, okay, themes moved up to a 0.7 or 0.8. So having a 6 seems appropriate. Yeah. It's above average.
Yes. Or I think it's so on spectrums. It's so good stylistically and so bad narratively that it meets in the middle.
And you can see, I've never seen Meet the Feebles, but Dead Alive, I love. It's one of my, I think the film is brilliant, and I see a lot of how he got from here to Dead Alive. And then you see his first corporate film, The Frighteners, where you see a lot of this come in, and I don't think it's quite as successful as that. I mean, what I'm saying is I actually think this and Dead Alive are more successful than his first big budget film, which was The Frighteners. And then you see what he did with Lord of the Rings. And then to me, King Kong, and I only saw the first Hobbit. All of a sudden, he seems derivative of himself.
More gore.
Huh?
Lord of the Rings should have had more ultra-violence and gore.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think if it were up to him and not the studio,
can you imagine Frodo jamming his brains back into his skull and like using a belt to...
Yeah, using a belt. Yeah, I mean, come on. With all the battles, oh, come on. They could have just lobbed off some head. And in like the whole contest like Legolas and Gimli had, they could have lobbed off a head and then used it as a baton to see who could throw the heads the farthest. Yeah. Oh, actually, he did do it in Two Towers, where I don't know if it was the extended cut or not. And he put his knife he put his axe in the spinal column of the orc, and he made it move. So, I mean, I think Peter Jackson really
is a sick fuck.
He is a sick fuck, and you gotta love that.
I mean, fish and women? What a terrible man. Anyway, I'm Jonathan Manzer with Chris Morgan.
Good night.
Happy MOTS-O-Ween.
Happy MOTS-O-Ween.
You're dropping Spock.
Editing and engineering by Scott Thurlow. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.